I still remember the exact moment I realized how completely wrong I'd been about him. It happened in the parking garage beneath my office building, right after I watched him answer a phone call with just 3 words. "Sell everything tomorrow." And suddenly, the man I thought could barely afford lunch was being called "sir" by people who managed more money than most countries. The strange part is, a week earlier, I almost had him removed from the building. At the time, I thought I was being practical. I'm Elise Carter, founder of a tech investment company in Manhattan. By the time I was 38, business magazines had turned me into one of those people strangers recognize in airports. I had money, influence, interviews, meetings stacked 6 months ahead. And if I'm being honest, I'd also developed a habit that I didn't notice until much later. I judged people quickly. Not intentionally. At least that's what I told myself. But after years around investors, executives, and high-level negotiations, my brain had become trained to make instant assumptions. Expensive suit? Successful. Confident handshake? Competent. Nervous behavior? Weak. Cheap clothes? Probably struggling. I thought it made me efficient. Most mornings followed the same routine. Black coffee. Elevator to the 32nd floor. Meetings until evening. My life was organized, controlled, predictable. That's why I noticed him almost immediately. He started appearing in the lobby every Tuesday around noon. Same worn gray jacket. Same old backpack. Same quiet posture near the coffee stand beside the elevators. At first, I assumed he was waiting for someone. Then I noticed the security guards knew him. Not personally. More like cautiously. One afternoon, I overheard one of them saying, "He's back again." The other guard shrugged. "Just leave him alone." That caught my attention. In New York, people notice patterns. Especially in private buildings filled with wealthy companies. A man showing up every week without a clear reason starts making people uncomfortable. Including me. The strange thing was, he never asked anyone for money. Never approached employees. Never caused problems. He just sat there quietly with a notebook. Writing. Sometimes for hours. Eventually curiosity turned into irritation. One Tuesday, I walked past him while heading to a board meeting, and I noticed his shoes were damaged near the soles. His backpack zipper was broken. He looked exhausted. I remember thinking, this building attracts successful people. Why does he keep coming here? That thought embarrasses me now. But at the time, it felt reasonable. Later that afternoon, I asked building management about him. "Who is that guy downstairs?" The manager looked uncomfortable. "Oh, him. You know him?" "Not really." "Then why is he allowed to stay here?" The manager hesitated before saying, "Technically, he rents one of the conference rooms upstairs." That surprised me. "Every week?" "Yes." "For what?" "No idea." I remember laughing quietly. He can barely afford new shoes, but he rents conference rooms in Manhattan? The manager smiled awkwardly, but didn't answer. That should have been the moment I questioned my assumptions. Instead, I became more suspicious. Over the next few weeks, I started paying attention to him. His routine never changed. Arrive at noon. Buy the cheapest coffee available. Sit alone. Write in the notebook. Then disappear upstairs for exactly 1 hour. Afterward, he'd leave without speaking to anyone. One Tuesday, I deliberately delayed my lunch meeting so I could watch him. I don't know why. Maybe because something about him irritated me beyond logic. He didn't seem embarrassed by how he looked. That confidence bothered me in a way I couldn't explain. Most people in New York perform success. He didn't. Around 1 p.m., he stood up and headed toward the elevators. Without thinking, I followed him. He entered conference room 14B. I waited outside longer than I should admit. Then I heard voices inside. Several voices. Professional. Serious. Not the kind of conversation you'd expect around someone who looked like him. A few minutes later, the door opened slightly. I caught a glimpse of 3 men in expensive suits sitting around the table while he spoke calmly near a projector screen. One of the suited men was taking notes. That part stayed with me. Taking notes. I recognized one of them immediately, a hedge fund executive I'd met at a finance event months earlier. The kind of man who normally ignored everyone beneath his status level. But inside that room, he was listening carefully to the quiet man in the gray jacket. I walked away confused. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Who was he? A consultant? An advisor? Nothing matched his appearance. The next Tuesday, I decided to confront him directly. Not aggressively. At least not in my mind. He was sitting near the coffee stand again, writing in his notebook. I walked over and said, "You spend a lot of time here." He looked up slowly. His eyes were calm. Tired, but calm. "Sometimes," he said. "You work in the building?" "No." "Then why rent conference rooms here?" He closed the notebook gently before answering. "People come when it's quiet." That answer irritated me for some reason. What does that even mean? He smiled slightly. Most people only hear themselves talking. There was no arrogance in his voice. That's what made it unsettling. I crossed my arms. "So what exactly do you do?" "Mostly research." "Research for who?" He paused. Then he said something strange. "People who are afraid after becoming successful." I remember almost laughing. The sentence sounded vague and ridiculous. But before I could respond, his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. And everything changed. The expression on his face became focused immediately. Sharp. Alert. He answered quietly. "Yeah." Silence. Then. "No. Don't hold it." Another pause. "Sell everything tomorrow morning." His tone was calm enough to make the words feel heavier. A few seconds later, he added. "And tell Marcus not to panic this time." Then he hung up. I stared at him. Not because of what he said. Because of how he said it. I'd spent 20 years around powerful people. There's a certain calm confidence you hear when someone is used to making decisions that affect millions of dollars. He had that voice. Not performative confidence. Real confidence. Before I could say anything else, 2 men entered the lobby from outside. Both wearing tailored suits. One of them noticed him immediately and walked over fast. "Sorry we're late, Mr. Vale." "Mr. Vale." The suited man shook his hand with visible respect. Then he noticed me standing there. Awkward silence. I recognized him instantly. Daniel Mercer. CEO of one of the largest private investment firms in the country. I'd spent 3 years trying to get a meeting with him. And he was apologizing to the man in the gray jacket. The 3 of us stood there for a second that felt strangely long. Then Daniel looked at me and said, "You know Adrian?" Adrian. That was the first time I heard his name. Before I could answer, Adrian simply said, "We've spoken a few times." Daniel smiled. "You're lucky. He avoids almost everyone." Then they headed toward the elevators. I remember standing completely still beside the coffee stand while my brain tried to reorganize reality. That night, I searched his name online. Nothing obvious appeared at first. No interviews. No flashy articles. No social media presence. But eventually, buried inside old financial reports, I found him. Adrian Vale. Founder of a private market analysis firm. Estimated net worth, multiple billions. No public photos newer than 10 years old. And then I understood why nobody recognized him. He wanted it that way. Over the next few days, I became obsessed with understanding him. Not because of his money. Because of what it revealed about my own psychology. I realized I had spent years believing wealth looked a certain way. That successful people naturally displayed status. That appearances reflected value. But Adrian had quietly walked through one of the most status-obsessed cities in the world completely invisible. And people, including me, treated him according to the story we created in our heads. A week later, I saw him again. This time, I sat beside him without pretending I had another reason. For a minute neither of us spoke. Then I finally said, "I looked you up. I figured. You let people think you're broke." He shrugged slightly. People usually see what they need to see. I remember staring at that sentence in my mind for days afterward. Because he was right. I needed him to fit my assumptions. A wealthy-looking man would have made me comfortable. His worn clothes created psychological tension because they contradicted the system my brain depended on. I asked him something I genuinely wanted to understand. Why dress like this if you could afford anything? He looked around the lobby before answering. You learn a lot when people think you have nothing to offer. That sentence hit harder than I expected. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't trying to prove a point. He had simply stopped needing validation from strangers. And suddenly I realized how much of my own life had been built around perception. The right image. The right office. The right impression. Even my confidence depended partly on how people responded to me. But Adrian moved through the world differently. He watched people without correcting their assumptions. And because of that, he saw who they really were. Over the next month, we spoke several more times. The conversations were simple. Quiet. Mostly about human behavior. One afternoon, I asked him why he continued renting conference rooms in our building. His answer surprised me. Years ago, he said, when I was actually broke, nobody would let me into rooms like this. So now I hold meetings here because I remember what exclusion feels like. I didn't know what to say after that. Because I remembered how quickly I'd wanted him removed from the building. Not because he'd done anything wrong. Because his appearance disrupted my sense of order. That realization stayed with me longer than anything else. The uncomfortable truth wasn't that I'd mistaken a billionaire for a broke man. The uncomfortable truth was how differently I treated him before I believed he had value. And honestly, I think most people do the same thing. We react to signals constantly. Clothes. Titles. Confidence. Cars. Followers. We tell ourselves we're judging competence, but often we're just responding to status cues. Adrian understood that better than anyone I'd ever met. A few months later, he stopped coming to the building. No explanation. Just disappeared from the routine. But before he left, he said something I still think about all the time. He told me, the fastest way to understand someone is to remove what benefits them. I asked what he meant. He smiled slightly. If people think you can do nothing for them, that's when you finally meet them honestly. After he left, I started noticing things I'd ignored for years. How differently executives treated waiters compared to investors. How quickly people dismissed quiet individuals in meetings. How often confidence was mistaken for intelligence. Even my own behavior changed. I slowed down before judging people. I listened longer. I became more aware of the stories my mind created within seconds of seeing someone. And strangely, that shift improved more than my relationships. It changed how I understood myself. Because assumptions don't only shape how we see others. They shape how we see our own worth too. A lot of people spend years trying to look successful enough to deserve respect. But Adrian already understood something most people never fully learn. The people obsessed with appearances are usually searching for reassurance themselves. Real confidence rarely announces itself. Sometimes it walks quietly through a crowded lobby carrying a broken backpack while everyone around it looks the other way. And sometimes, one unexpected phone call reveals how blind our assumptions really are.